The Muhammadu Buhari administration has promised to reinvest the sum of $308 million on 3 major infrastructure projects in the country. These include the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja-Kaduna Highway, and a second bridge across the River Niger in the eastern city of Onitsha. The money in question is the latest tranche of the returned stolen funds ferreted out of the country by the late dictator, General Sani Abacha. But first, the federal government, for the express motive of ensuring transparency and accountability, has decided to domicile it with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. To make sense of all this, we've now been joined from our Arise Abuja studio by Uche Orji, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Uche Orji.
Good morning.
Good to have you again on the morning show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, this morning, just before you joined us, we were discussing the coronavirus with the Director General of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. But I'm sure it's a subject that you will also be interested in as an investor. So what do you think are the implications of this new scourge called coronavirus on the investment outlook? And what does it mean for an investment authority like yours, the NSIA?
Thank you very much. And it's quite unfortunate that we have to deal with this situation of coronavirus. All I will say is that situations like this, 3 things tend to happen. 1, the market tends to overreact. 2, these situations tend to pass. And then if people are onto it, then it's quite frankly a buying opportunity. And that is really my personal view. And I speak to that from experience. In 2003, 2004, I was a semiconductor analyst for JP Morgan based in London. And I saw the impact of SARS. And again, I've been told by many people SARS is not anywhere as, coronavirus is not as serious as SARS was. But SARS was devastating. It was devastating to the markets as well. And when it passed, the market recovered. My view with this is as complicated as it is, and quite frankly, is even more complicated given the role that China now plays both as a consumer and as well as an integral part of the global supply chain. There is no company today, especially in technology, that does not have manufacturing in China or components that come out of China, or for which China is not a big demand driver. So let's accept it. China is a big factor in the global economy. And so when things like this happen and you're shutting down cities and there's all kinds of companies closing down their operations, closing shops, it will have an impact. It will have an impact. And so in the short term, I expect the markets to feel the negative impact of this, but I also see it as a buying opportunity. For the NSIA, we are not making any changes to our portfolio at the moment. In fact, quite frankly, the discussions we're having right now is whether to take advantage of this to add to some of the exposures we already have, because as with all of these things, it shall pass, and when it passes, the market will tend to recover.
Amen to that. Now, let's talk about the funding of the NSIA by the federal government. You started off with $1 billion from the Obasanjo administration, and the current administration, President Muhammadu Buhari administration, upped that. Can we, discuss that and how much funding you've received in total, as well as the returns on the investment? It was reported last year that you had made $350 million. Do you have an update on that?
Yes, I do. First of all, I think one of the things that's really remarkable for the NSIA is that through the recession and through the challenges in the economy, the government continues to support and fund the NSIA. You'll remember recently in November, at the National Economic Council, a sum of $250 million was approved to be transferred to the NSIA. Obviously, those funds haven't hit our accounts yet. We're expecting them shortly. But there is a commitment to funding the NSIA, which we are grateful for, especially considering the challenges we're facing today in the economy in the country. Now, on top of all that, I mean, we've reported our earnings, and I think we've discussed it on this show, and you can always go back and look at those numbers. It continues to be steadily profitable, and I think we've ended the year in a solid position for 2019. The audit is being carried out, and we'll report before the end of April our results for 2019. Outlook for 2020 is, and we continue to pray and hope that there will be more consistent contributions coming to the NSIA. Now, so in terms of funding that has come from the government, like you mentioned, we started with $1 billion. this government has added $500 million plus this $250 that we're expecting. So that will make it $750 million of actual cash contribution. And so if you add up all of that with the returns earned so far, the NSIA in terms of real cash in its book is just slightly above $2 billion. Now, obviously, there's also other pockets of funds that we manage. For example, now, the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, to which $650 million has been injected prior to now. 90 billion naira has also been injected, and into which the new $308 million that is being repatriated will be injected. These funds are designed, the PIDF is designed to address 5 critical projects. The Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja-Kaduna Highway, the second Niger Bridge, the Mambila Power Plant, and the East-West Road. The $308 million that was announced yesterday, which is quite frankly credit to the government through lots of negotiations, will be channeled to Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Abuja-Kaduna Highway, and second Niger Bridge. And there's all sorts of enhanced scrutiny and supervision that are now going to this, given the external funding nature of this with the agreement struck with the US government. So all in all, I think returns have been solid and stable. We've been on this show almost every year to report our earnings. 2019 has closed well for us, solid. And I'm looking forward to 2020 to be a good year. I'm actually quite optimistic on a number of things we have done. And I also think one of the things you're going to see in 2020 is a lot of co-investments and partnerships, funds that we're creating to address several areas. And so quite frankly, in terms of funding, in total, the core NSIA funds, like I said, just slightly over $2 billion. And then we have all these other funds like PIDF, which with all the funds coming in now, PIDF, I expect, will be over $1 billion funded. And then also we have funds we're managing for the federal government in other areas and also for the DMO. So it's all looking quite, but those are not core funds of the NSI. You need to be very careful. So they're not included in our books. Those are third-party funds that we manage on behalf of the other agencies of government.
Well, thank you. And co-investment and partnership is certainly key. And I'd like to take us back to what you raised as well, which is the fact that the new Abacha route that we're looking at is going to be used on 3 main infrastructural projects in the country, the Abuja-Kaduna Highway, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway as well, and, of course, the second Niger Bridge. Now, I wanted to ask you if there's a timeline for completion with regards to these projects. And I'm saying this because there's often a lack of transparency when it comes to the tendering process of these and the contracts that are awarded, etc., with a lot of corruption going into contracts that are awarded of that size. So what is the NSIA also doing to ensure that there is that transparency and accountability and to ensure that things are completed within a certain time frame?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for that. I think, first of all, the current decision to transfer these funds into this project should give you some level of comfort. And because that was not just done yesterday, the government actually have been involved in these discussions long before the NSIA was asked to participate in the negotiations. The first time we got involved in this was in June of 2018. And between then and today, there has been a lot of due diligence across the entire project, all the 3 projects. So consequently, I think for us to come to the level of comfort where external parties are willing to participate should give you some comfort. 2, we have been very transparent on all these projects, our involvement, how much has been voted into the projects, what is the size of the projects, and the levels of completion. Every quarter and every year, at least, we take the press to go and see the projects. So you're welcome on the next trip to come and see all of them. I intend to go and see both Abuja-Kaduna, Lagos-Ibadan, second Niger Bridge before the end of this quarter, as I usually do. In terms of timing for completion, we're still looking at 2022 for all 3 projects. We're looking at February 2022 for second Niger Bridge, sometime around July 2022 for Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And if anything changes, and we've had little matters come up, delays, be it community issues, be it and these things happen in projects. And if there's anything fundamental that causes a delay, we'll be transparent with you. I think every week we receive progress reports from the contractors, which is distributed quite widely. And I see some of those pictures trending on the internet. So there's been a lot more transparency, and I think there'll be a lot more scrutiny and transparency in these projects. And let me also say that with regards to the Abacha funds that will be, as you call them, that will be repatriated into these projects, there is also an enhanced level of governance beyond what we have today, which I believe is truly, quite frankly, transparent and world-class in some ways, because the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute has ranked the NSIA in the top quartile consistently for transparency. We expect to see more civil society involvement in supervising this. That's actually part of the agreement. So there's all sorts of requirements to ensure that everything is done openly and transparently, and you'll see that as the governance for this supervision of these funds is set up. We're expecting these funds, I believe, sometime in April. So between now and then, all the enhanced governance will be in place.
Well, let's talk about the healthcare projects that the Sovereign Investment Authority is involved in. We have the Cancer Center at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, radiology and diagnostics facilities in Kano and Umuahia. Do you have other projects in the pipeline? What's the overall strategy to strengthen the healthcare sector? And if I may add, I understand that the Cancer Center at Luth is managed by Healthcare SA. Is that South African health management body? And if that is the case, does it mean that we don't have health care management professionals or agencies in Nigeria that could have done it?
Sure. Well, thank you for that. First of all, there's so many parts to this question, so I'm going to take my time to unpack it. The first part of the question has to do with the overall strategy. And I think when we decided to invest in healthcare, we considered healthcare as a critical part of social infrastructure. Very important for so many reasons. One is, to save us medical tourism, which as far back as 2008 was estimated at over $1 billion a year for medical tourism, focused on 4 areas: cancer, cardiology, renal care, and surgery. These were the 4 big areas that Nigerians went abroad for medicine. But cancer was 40% of medical tourism as far back as 2008, when the first data we received on this, and it has increased subsequently. So we decided to attack cancer as one of the key areas. When we decided to go in, we have 13 projects in our pipeline, actually about 14 now in our pipeline. What we decided to do was to implement these 3 first, learn our lessons, stabilize those, make sure our systems work well, make sure that we don't make too many mistakes, and then we'll get more aggressive. And I think we've stabilized the Cancer Treatment Center in Lagos. Is running very well at the moment. When I see the data that comes from there, we're currently running at a rate of close to 100 patients a day. We've expanded it. We expect that by the time all the new equipment that we have in place come in, we'll be expanding to more than 200 patients a day. We've also gone ahead to build a training center.
Sorry to interrupt you. We'll need to take a short commercial break. When we return, then you can continue with your comment. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still with us in our Abuja studio is Uche Orji, the CEO of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. Well, before we went on break, you were talking about your strategy for the healthcare sector and also the Cancer Center at the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. If you may just continue with what you were saying.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Point of correction, it's at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. It's at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital at Luth in. Yeah. That's right, in Idiaraba. So to your question about, so that center is running very well now. I think we're quite happy. You remember the president commissioned it on February 9th last year. It took a bit of time for us to truly stabilize it, but it's working well now. We're actually expanding it. And what we have completed recently, last month, was a training center. Because one of the things we found was that the knowledge required to operate some of the modern machines that we put there was lacking in the country. Nigerians needed to be trained. And quite frankly, that also speaks to why we needed to go and get an operator who's used to running these centers in other countries. Obviously, the idea now is to train Nigerians to the point where we can upskill ourselves. Not that we don't have oncologists and physicists, it's just that the history of cancer treatment in Nigeria has been so bad. And I know this firsthand, having watched people treated at Luth before we made this investment. And the reality is that the equipment that were there before were old, they were breaking down, they were many years ago. And across the country, that was the situation, to be honest. And so we've made this investment. One of the equipment we bought, the high energy lean accelerator, was the second only such equipment in Africa, and there was nobody who could operate it. And so that's why we had to bring outsiders to manage it for us. Obviously, over time, as people get trained, then we'll be able to transfer the management of that. So that's really the plan. Look, we have also been trained by Nigerians who live abroad. I mean, at the moment, there's a team coming from University of Virginia that'll be coming to conduct training there. So Nigeria, one of the areas in America, in the United States, that Nigeria has a competitive advantage is medicine. And I know that because I lived in New York for six years. And you will hardly go to any hospital, any area of therapy, and you will not see a Nigerian. It's quite remarkable how skilled our people are in New York and in the other parts of the United States. But the reality is that bringing some of those people home, at the moment, we're just having training missions. They come in, they train our people, and they go back. But I think we're getting to the point where we'll soon be able to get to the point where we can confidently hand over the management of these facilities. The reality about our strategy, like I said, there are many more things in the pipeline. I'm expecting that we'll commence activities on 3 to maybe 6 more projects this year, having worked at our systems comfortably. So there are about 10 live projects in the pipeline, but we'll take it in bits as our capital improves. Now, outside of healthcare, outside of cancer treatment, obviously, we're looking at things like Center for Advanced Medicine, where we can take on all 4 major areas of therapy, the renal, cardio, and cancer, and a few other areas that, of course, our research will show should be important. So you'll see our footprint in healthcare become more aggressive. Finally, on healthcare, we're raising a fund around 6 projects that we have developed, where external parties are going to co-invest with us in developing this project. So it'll be an exciting area for NSIA in 2020.
Fantastic. Let's look at another sector of the economy that you're focused on, which is agriculture. Fertilizer in particular, you support the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative policy. And 2 months ago, it was reported that you have now signed an agreement with the Russian firm Uralchem for production of fertilizer in Nigeria. Can you give us updates on that and other things that you're doing in the sector, other projects and potential returns and what have you?
Thank you. Thank you. On fertilizer and agriculture in general, this is one of the key areas of investment for NSIA. So let me speak to fertilizers first. Fertilizer, we started in 2017. We're privileged to have been invited to be the implementing agency of the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. And it's been a success. In the last 3 years, we have blended and sold about 20 million bags of fertilizer, just about that, between 18 and 20 million bags of fertilizer, 50 kg bags of fertilizer. When the program started, the president asked a question, which is, how can we deliver high-quality fertilizers at a reasonable cost to farmers? And the only idea was to domesticate the blending. And at that time, I think there were less than 4 blending plants that were operational. Today in the program, we have 23 blending plants that have been accredited to participate in 2020. And when I look at the pipeline of applicants, we'll be getting to 29 blending plants within the next year of people who have built blending facilities in the country. So think about it. As early as January 2017, only 4 were operational, and they were running at very low utilization rates. Today, we have 23 in the program, rising to 29 if all the other new applicants qualify. The agreement signed with Uralchem and the agreement signed with Morocco all continue to subsist. Those agreements address different components. There are 4 components you need to blend fertilizer in different mixes. There's urea, which at the moment we buy from Indorama, and we're looking forward to the Dangote project coming on soon because that will provide a huge relief and less dependency and make it more affordable. We also have the potash, which is what we have signed today with Uralchem or Uralkali, which is their implementing company in Russia. And then there is phosphate, which we buy from OCP of Morocco. And then, of course, there's limestone granules, which we buy locally in Nigeria. So these are the 4 components needed, and you blend them in different mixes to make fertilizer for different types of products. This year, we expect the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative to significantly increase. We're looking at more than doubling what has been a historical commitment to this program. Number 2, we're also looking to increase the number of products. Up until now, it's been one type of blend, 20-10-10, which is great for grains. But then we need to make other types of blends that will be needed for things like cocoa and palm. So this is going to be quite an interesting program in 2020. And I think it's done something. We all need to be very grateful to the initiative, to be honest. because before the initiative started, fertilizer prices were up to 11,000 naira in some places. In fact, I heard 13,000 naira in some places. And this was in 2016. The program brought the prices down to 5,500 naira for 2010-10. And so this has been a significant value added, and I think in many ways going towards the whole food self-sufficiency program of the government, and we're privileged to be part of that. Now, regarding the wider agriculture strategy, we have a partnership with a South African company called UFF, where we created a fund to invest in agriculture projects in Nigeria. The first project we've invested in is an integrated maize and soy and feed mill plant in Nasarawa State. Construction work is ongoing now in rebuilding that to expand that farm, and so I think we'll show you when we are done. You all know that we tend to not talk too much about these things until we're done. We'll be showing you some really remarkable things that's going on in Nasarawa State on our first project. But that will now be the basis for us to expand quite significantly this year. The third thing we're doing in agriculture is, many of you may not know this, but NSIA was one of the sponsors of the Fund for Africa, Fund for Agriculture Finance in Nigeria, FAFIN, run by Sahel, along with KFW and AFDB and the Ministry of Finance and Agriculture. So that fund is run by Sahel Capital. It's investing across many areas in the country. So this is really an area of focus for the NSI. It's one of 5 key areas of focus: healthcare, agriculture, toll roads, power, and gas industrialization. But agriculture is taking a big chunk of our time, and we expect that will continue through 2020. I'm quite excited about what's coming. Look forward to a few more partnerships, a few more co-investment funds being set up in agriculture, and many more projects in the pipeline across the country.
Certainly, and gas industrialization is a point I'm definitely going to touch on because, like you said, it's a key area of focus, particularly gas flare reduction and also the production of ammonia. What is the update on this with regards to the NSIA, or what update does the NSIA have for the public with regards to efforts being made in this realm?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I mean, last year, March last year, the NSIA board, the board of the NSIA voted to include gas industrialization as one of the key areas of focus for the NSIA. So we now have 5 areas of focus. And we have 2 projects that are live or that are in different stages of development. One is a gas flare reduction project, which is taking one of the flare gas sites into LPG production for our partners. That is still, we've signed a term sheet last year, and we are aggressively working on the development for that project. I think that project is, in my opinion, going to be one of the most important things that the NSIA has been privileged to be part of. And there are 3 reasons for that. First, and I don't know how many of you, I went to university in Port Harcourt, and I remember back as 1985 when I was studying chemical engineering. Gas flare was a big issue everywhere. The night sky lights up every night with flare sites all over. And that's just not just a waste, but it's an environmental disaster. And I don't think it makes any sense. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of resources, and it has bad implications for the environment. Especially when you think about this country, where a lot of people still depend on biomass for cooking, firewood, and your flaring gas makes no sense. So our view is actually not just to invest in the gas flare reduction, which we're going to do, not just this one project. We plan to raise a fund to do many more projects in this area. But we're also looking to get ourselves involved in ensuring that the downstream end of making sure that people get some of these cooking units and LPG at a reasonable price is implemented. So this is why, holistically, we're very passionate about this area of investment. Now, the ammonia project that you referenced, we signed an agreement with OCP during the last visit of President Muhammad Buhari to Morocco to develop an ammonia plant in Nigeria for offtake. We're still developing that project. This is a big project. It's going to be over $1 billion of investment when it's done. So we're taking our time to develop that project. And I'll be providing you updates as things go along. But I think this is something that does 2 things. Number one, again, we're going to utilize more of our gas resources and then also rebalance the trade, where we are just buying a lot of things for fertilizer. We can actually export ammonia to try and rebalance the trade a little bit. So these are the things that we're working on in gas industrialization at the moment. The reality, though, is that having put our head into the sector, many more things are coming up in terms of gas infrastructure that we are looking at the moment. We will not pre-announce any of these projects until we are sure or we're comfortable that we're sure that we can do them. But the pipeline is very active, and we're very excited about the opportunities that this presents, not just for the NSIA, but for the country as a whole.
Well, Uche Orji, thank you very much indeed. We would have loved to ask you more questions about your infrastructure investments and also about the commodity exchange. But unfortunately, we don't have much time, and we just have to thank you at this point.
Thanks for joining us.
For joining us this morning. Thank you very much indeed.